Outlander Season 8 just ended Jamie and Claire's story after 12 years. But here's what almost nobody is talking about. The real story behind whether Season 9 could ever happen is buried in one interview, one unfinished book, and one decision stars made 3 years before you ever saw that finale. For over a decade, Outlander has been one of those shows that fans didn't just watch, they lived in. Claire and Jamie Fraser's story stretched across centuries, wars, oceans, and impossible odds, and in May of 2026, that story officially came to an end with the 10th episode of Season 8. But here's the part that's been quietly confusing fans ever since the credits rolled. The ending wasn't exactly closed. It was left open enough that people are still asking, right now, whether there's any real chance of a Season 9. So let's actually dig into what's true, what's been confirmed, and what's still just hope. Here's the first thing you need to know, and it might surprise you. Stars didn't decide to end Outlander after Season 8 flopped or lost viewers. This decision was made back in January of 2023, more than 3 years before the final episode ever aired. Stars' president of original programming at the time, Catherine Busby, publicly stated that after nearly a decade, it was time to bring Claire and Jamie's story to what she called a proper conclusion. That means Season 8 wasn't written as a show trying to survive one more year. It was written from day one as a planned ending, with the writers and cast knowing exactly where the finish line was while they filmed it. Now, that actually changes how you should think about the finale itself. When a show gets canceled suddenly, the ending usually feels rushed, like they're cramming 10 seasons of ideas into 2 episodes. That's not what happened here. Filming for Season 8 wrapped all the way back in September of 2024, which means the writers had real time to plan a send-off instead of scrambling for one. And according to people close to the production, that intentional planning is part of why the finale feels the way it does. Emotional, unhurried, but also very deliberately not entirely finished. Here's where it gets interesting. In interviews before the finale aired, Katrina Balfe revealed something that a lot of fans don't know. She and Sam Heughan were the ones who pushed for Season 8 to happen in the first place. They believed that without one more season, the show would not get the ending it deserved. Think about that for a second. The 2 lead actors of Outlander essentially advocated for their own show's final chapter because they didn't want Claire and Jamie's story to just stop mid-sentence. That tells you something about how personally invested this cast was in getting the ending right, and it also tells you they cared enough to fight for more time when they felt the story needed it. So, if the actors themselves were willing to push for more, could that happen again for a Season 9? Here's the honest answer, and I want to be straight with you about this. As of right now, Outlander has not been renewed for a 9th season, and there are no official plans for one. Starz has not made any announcement suggesting that's changing. If you've seen videos or posts claiming there's already a confirmed Season 9 trailer, that is not accurate. What we do have is something a little more interesting than a simple no, and that's where showrunner Matthew B. Roberts comes in. Roberts has spoken about the ending, and he's been careful with his words in a very specific way. He hasn't ruled out continuing the story of the Fraser family down the line. He's expressed genuine interest in the possibility of picking things back up someday, even without a concrete plan on the table right now. And that matters, because showrunners don't usually leave that door open unless they mean it. If Roberts wanted fans to fully move on, he could have said so plainly. Instead, his comments have left just enough room that people are still talking about it months later, which is exactly what we're doing right now. Then there's the finale itself, and this is the piece that really fuels the Season 9 conversation. Jamie and Claire's fate at the end of Season 8 was left deliberately vague. Without spoiling every detail for anyone who hasn't finished it, the ending gives the audience an emotional resolution, but it stops short of showing what their lives actually look like afterward. No extended time jump, no clear final chapter for their day-to-day life together. That kind of ending doesn't happen by accident on a show this carefully planned. When a story ends with that much room for interpretation, it usually means the door was left open on purpose, even if nobody involved is promising anything yet. And there's one more factor that almost nobody mentions when they talk about Season 9, and it might be the most important one. Outlander is based on Diana Gabaldon's novel series, and here's the twist. The show actually finished before the books did. Gabaldon is still working on the final installment of her saga, meaning the on-screen story wrapped up ahead of the source material it's based on. That gap between the books and the show is exactly the kind of space a future continuation could fill if the appetite and the opportunity ever line up. So when people ask if Season 9 is truly impossible, the more accurate answer is that it's unconfirmed, not closed. Now, let's talk about the piece of this puzzle that's actually concrete, because it's easy to get lost in maybe and someday when there's something real happening right now. Outlander's universe isn't actually going quiet. Starz has already renewed the prequel series Outlander, Blood of My Blood, for second season, and that's not speculation, that's confirmed. The prequel follows the earlier generation of the Fraser and Beecham families, exploring how Jamie's parents and Claire's parents lived their own love stories long before Claire ever touched those stones at Cray Na Dun. Season 2 is set to premiere on September 18th, and for fans wondering whether Starz still believes in this world, that answer is written right there in the release calendar. Here's why that matters more than people realize. Networks don't usually invest in expanding a universe they're planning to walk away from completely. If Starz genuinely saw Outlander as a closed book with zero future value, the smarter business move would be to let the whole franchise fade quietly. Instead, they're actively building outward from it. That doesn't guarantee a Season 9 of the original series, but it does tell you the IP itself is still considered valuable enough to keep growing, which keeps the door from slamming shut entirely. Let's talk about how renewals actually get decided, because this is where a lot of fan theories go wrong. Starz, like most networks, looks at a combination of factors before greenlighting anything. Total viewership numbers, completion rates, meaning how many people who start an episode actually finish it, production costs, and how a season performs across every platform it's available on, not just live viewership. Outlander has actually posted some staggering numbers on this front. Across Netflix alone, the show logged more than 1.2 billion hours watched between 2023 and 2025. That's an enormous number for a show that, technically, wasn't even airing new episodes for most of that window. It shows the back catalog alone was pulling in a massive audience, which is exactly the kind of long-tail performance that makes networks reconsider decisions they thought were final. So, if Blood of My Blood Season 2 performs even stronger than expected, does that change anything? Realistically, it could shift the conversation, but probably not in the most obvious way. A hit prequel season is more likely to convince Starz to expand that spin-off further, maybe with a Season 3, rather than immediately reviving the original series. But strong prequel numbers do send a signal that audience appetite for this world hasn't faded, and that signal is exactly the kind of data networks pay attention to when deciding what to greenlight next. It's not a guarantee, but it's the most realistic path toward keeping the broader Outlander universe alive. Now here's something worth sitting with. This isn't the first time a beloved show has ended and then quietly found its way back. Television has plenty of examples where a series wrapped up, fans assumed that was the final word, and then years later, a revival or continuation happened anyway once circumstances changed. Sometimes it's a streaming platform picking up rights. Sometimes it's a cast reunion driven by demand. Sometimes it's simply that enough time passes and the appetite for the story returns stronger than expected. None of that means Outlander is guaranteed to follow the same path, but it does mean the show ended, and the show can never come back are not automatically the same sentence. Let's also address the cast, because their availability is a real practical factor, not just a sentimental one. Sam Heughan, Katrina Balfe, Sophie Skelton, Richard Rankin, John Bell, David Barry, Izzy Meikle-Small, and Charles Vandervaart all reprised their roles through the final season, and every one of them has spoken about the show with real affection, not the kind of distancing language actors use when they're ready to move on for good. Heughan in particular has talked about wanting to explore other creative projects now that his long run on the show has ended, which is completely understandable after over a decade in the same role. But wanting new opportunities and being unwilling to ever return are two very different things, especially if a future project came with the right story attached. And that brings us to the real emotional core of why this conversation refuses to die down. The finale gave Jamie and Claire closure, but it didn't give the audience their whole future. We don't get to see what their day-to-day life actually became after everything they survived. We don't get an extended look at their relationships with their children in the years that followed. That kind of restraint, choosing emotional closure over a full epilogue, is either the mark of a show that trusted its audience to fill in the rest, or the mark of a show that quietly left space for someone to fill it in later. Right now, nobody involved has said definitively which one it is. And that uncertainty is exactly why fans are still talking about season 9 months after the finale aired. So, where does all of this actually leave us? Let's bring it together because there's a real difference between wishful thinking and an informed prediction, and I want to leave you with the second one. Right now, the honest, verified answer is this. Outlander Season 9 has not been renewed, there is no official trailer, and there is no confirmed plan for a continuation. That's the truth, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise just to keep you watching. But what we do have is a list of real, documented reasons why the door hasn't been fully closed either, and when you line them all up together, the picture gets a lot more interesting than a flat yes or no. Think about everything we've actually established. This ending was planned 3 years in advance, which means it was crafted with intention, not desperation. The 2 lead actors personally advocated for extra time to get the story right, showing just how much they cared about the ending landing the way it deserved to. The showrunner has openly left room for the possibility of continuing the Fraser family story down the line. The finale itself was written with a deliberately open emotional door instead of a fully wrapped bow. The books this show is based on are still being written, meaning the source material technically hasn't caught up to where the show chose to stop. And the wider universe is actively expanding right now, with Blood of My Blood Season 2 proving Starz still sees real value in this world. None of these facts alone guarantees a Season 9. But together, they tell you this is not a story that ended because everyone walked away and never looked back. It ended because it was time to pause, with almost everyone involved leaving just enough space to return if the moment ever calls for it. And that's honestly what makes this such a different kind of ending compared to most shows. Usually when a series gets canceled, it's messy. Storylines get rushed, characters disappear without explanation, and fans are left angry instead of hopeful. What Outlander did instead was rare. It ended on its own terms, with its cast fighting for the right send-off, its showrunner still emotionally attached to the world he built, and its universe expanding rather than shrinking. That's not the behavior of a franchise that's truly finished. That's the behavior of a story taking a breath. If you've been with Claire and Jamie since 2014, since a World War II nurse first touched a stone circle in Scotland and stepped into a different century entirely, you know this isn't just a television show ending. It's the closing of something that a lot of people grew up watching, fell in love through, and returned to again and again for over a decade. That kind of connection doesn't just disappear because a season finale aired. And honestly, based on everything we've uncovered here today, I don't think Starz, the cast, or even Diana Gabaldon herself see this as the true final word either. They see it as the end of one chapter in a much longer story, one that still has unfinished pages waiting somewhere between the show and the books it came from. So here's my honest take, and I want to hear if you feel the same way. I don't think Season 9 is coming tomorrow, and I don't think anyone should hold their breath waiting on an announcement next month. But I also don't believe this is truly over. Between an unfinished book series, an actively growing prequel universe, a showrunner who hasn't closed the door, and a fan base that clearly isn't going anywhere, all the pieces are sitting there, waiting for the right moment to come together. Sometimes that's exactly how the best comebacks happen, quietly, patiently, until suddenly it isn't quiet anymore. Now, I want to know what you think. Do you believe Outlander will find its way back for a real Season 9 someday, or do you think Claire and Jamie's story ended exactly where it should have? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one, and I'm genuinely curious whether you're team it's truly over or team this isn't the last we've seen. If this breakdown gave you the real answers you were actually looking for, do me a favor and hit that like button. It helps this video reach more fans who are asking the exact same questions you were. And if you want to stay updated the moment anything actually changes with the story, whether that's Blood of My Blood Season 2 news or any real update on the future of the franchise, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss it. I'll see you in the next one.